These diseases that are rated in Zambia, at least among the ones that as to devastatingly so taking the lives of our people. We also have malaria and so on. But the statistics inform us that we have about 1.3 of our people that are living with HIV and are captured and are dependent on ARVs. Just that one singular decision puts 1.3 people at risk in terms of their lives. So this is a disaster for our country, and therefore it cannot be casually discussed as if it's a political move among politicians. This has to do with the lives of the people. Do we have hope of government having mitigation measures around this? The answer is no, because this government is broke. Is government on top of things, as the minister was trying to talk about? The answer is no. The American ambassador said from late 2021, just after these colleagues got into government, they noticed. So it can never be said to be historical, because the ambassador was very categorical. It is late 2021, just after our colleagues got into government. Our suspicion could be that maybe there were opportunistic elements that were already gunning to take advantage of this sector, and the money is provided for their personal benefit. Because how is it that the pilfering and the theft and the corruption in this sector immediately was introduced and noticed in 2021, just after our colleagues got into government, and the lead flag was raised, according to ambassador, engaged the different stakeholders, including government, that I think from the assessment and from the signals they're getting, the medicines and the support that they're providing is not going to the intended people. Instead, it is finding itself in private entities and private pockets. And it's not a one-day issue. Obviously, the fact that this is support, it is support because of identifying that there could be areas of vulnerability as a country in this sector, which support is coming purely out of the benevolence of the people, American people, to be able to save lives. How it is that such a decision will be made to stop that support is because the noble intention to which this support was supposed to come has not really been fulfilled, particularly in the last 3 to 4 years. So the Minister of Health can't come and say we're on top of things, because if they were on top of things, we would not have reached this far. Okay, from 2021, Mr. Lucci, there has been a number of scandals around the Minister of Health. I remember having a conversation with you around some kind of a contract that had to do with about $100 million to do with some facilities that needed to be put up. One of the contractors, or somebody that was involved in the bidding process, did disclose with evidence that there was solicitation and even commitment of high-ranking officials in the UPND government that needed vehicles, that needed a certain amount of money moved here and there. Was there any action taken? The answer is no.
Is it a bigger sign of a weakness by the government in terms of something that they put front and center when they came into office, which is fighting corruption? Is this a sign that maybe we've been a bit relaxed?
You see, the trouble is that our friends in the UPND campaigned consistently based on propaganda. I think there must have been somebody who saw this philosophy that to get into government, just thrash before the Zambian people every rhetoric, for as long as it's sweet enough to get them enticed to vote for you. You don't really have to measure what you're promising around what is practicable. So they succeeded using lies and deceit and all these fantastic promises to get into government. But that's one thing. But when you get into government, you have to now, actualize the promises that you made. The choice, which was supposed to have been a very simple choice for them to make, is to get into government and admit that having never been in government, at least for the president, now that he has got into government, he has found that the reality in government is different from what he imagined would be the case. So that the Zambian people would pardon him of his promises and give him, some kind of a leeway to be able to work with what he has found, to work with the bureaucracies of government and be able to understand and learn the systems of government. But instead, he continued being pushed on the trajectory of trying to still make himself look like he knows what he's doing, and more promises and more promises. So instead, because of the desire to look good in the eyes of Zambians through rhetoric, the rot within government, which manifested at the early stage, they couldn't admit and deal with it. So because the effort was more on the path of propaganda. Had Mr. Hakainde Hichilema immediately got into government and the agri manifestation, the Minister of Health, started showing up, and he put his foot down, dealt with it decisively, we will not be where we are today. So you are right to say that UPND has never been committed in the fight against corruption. What they have been committed to is to try and create and manufacture through their propaganda cases against the previous regime, because as far as they are concerned, if we blame PF so much, people will look at us from a positive point. So you've seen that a number of PF leaders, those who are in government, have been arrested. And when you examine some of the cases under which have been charged, they don't even make sense. Of course, some of them we can't discuss in detail because they're in court. But when you look at the indictment, you look at the evidence and everything, you can tell that this is politically motivated. You can never have a genuine fight against corruption that only focuses on what you think your friends did. The real fight against corruption, when you get into government, that will really be genuine, is the one that deals with the happenings at a particular time that we're in office. Those that are historical are easy, because all you need is to look at what people did when they were in government. But real complicated corruption is the one that is happening at the time that we're in government, because it's record time, and you must be committed to check the system, to check how things are being done. How is it that we can have, for example, a challenge in the agriculture sector, in the sense that we had enough stocks that would last us at least 2-3 years, that even if we had drought, we would not have the excuse, quote unquote, of saying that we haven't produced and therefore there's no food, because we had something reasonable within the reserves. But people deliberately decided to sell, export, some of which went to countries like Tanzania and other places. A year later, because also the procurement system and the chain of supply for inputs and so on was also destabilized because of politics. Certain individuals or companies that were traditionally for many years and decades been in that business were labeled PF, and therefore contracts were terminated and so on, recklessly without thinking of the consequences. Later on, we ended up with the first year of UPN, the first season of UPN being in government, a disaster in terms of production. Second year, a disaster in terms of production. Then hit by these factors that they are referred to as an excuse, and we have ended up a hungry country. So I can only say, Mr. Lucci, is that it's a sum total of exposure, that lack of experience in government, and the inclination towards politicking outside the very precious virtues that each and every citizen must have, especially those who offer themselves for public service as politicians, the virtue of patriotism, love for your country, to a point where if you are ushered into office, we should never get into these offices and start looking at what you do to benefit or to promote yourself. It should be on, when you get into office, what is it that I can do for the benefit of the ordinary Zambian? There's too much politicking and competing, even in issues which deal with the livelihood of our people. And I think it's a very sad development.
I agree with you. In fact, so one of the things I remember before 2021, or during that period leading up to the election, speaking to those of you who were in PF, I remember some of your colleagues used to say that, listen, there is corruption, yes, but that corruption isn't being perpetuated by leadership officials of, or like high senior ranking ministers, etc., etc., but that there is corruption within the civil service. In a way, you could make the argument that is the case even today, that there is corruption. It's within the civil service, but there's not much that's being done. I mean, it's not like when you were in government as a party, it's not like there's a lot that you did in terms of trying to figure out where are these loopholes within the civil service. Similar story today. It doesn't feel like there's a lot that's being done in terms of trying to figure out where those loopholes are. So how do we go forward as a country when it clearly looks like there are officials that may not be party members, but that people that work in the civil service are the ones who are responsible for some of the leakages and the pilferage that's happening? When that happens,
you're basically agreeing with me. In the sense that the so-called fight against corruption has been politicized. We use it to weaponize, the citizen against one group of or set of politicians, because, as it were, they were the ones who were in government, and to that effect, if we talk about corruption, we want to name prominent politicians and try and see if we can use the judicial system to get to dent them, and so on and so forth. You are right that it's the entire system that needs overhaul. The starting point is, are we able to change the narrative and the policy position as politicians? So this thing is it should never be seen from a partisan point of view, but as a problem that we should accept, that maybe it has gotten embedded within the systems. Today, my sister Roramiti wrote something, I think you saw it circulating, where she was saying, okay, it's not just the drugs that have been stolen. You can go even to simple things like just accommodation at University of Zambia, Ridgeway, or indeed the main campus, where to get a room, you have to pay hefty amounts of money. And
it doesn't just end there. I mean, look at CDF as an example.
Yeah.
You see it in these PAC hearings. You see council officials giving questionable answers, and you start wondering, but wait, what is the issue in this country?
So in this case, you find that because of lack of patriotism, somehow even the nobility of people offering themselves for public office is no longer there. The justing for position and to become the president, MP, and all this has become so commercial. You understand? It's like now we have accepted the myth, which is not correct, and they were passing it to the next generation, that actually to become a politician is the most lucrative thing you can ever do. When in fact, it's the most draining thing that you can ever involve yourselves in. Those who have been business people and genuinely they offer themselves for public service, not to go and steal, they will tell you that they ended up losing more in politics than they gained. Okay? Unless you get into politics and start stealing, maybe it will be lucrative. But if you get into politics and public office for purposes of saving, you will walk away even more poorer than you went in. That's how come most of the MPs, and if you do the statistics, we should actually sympathize with politicians. Most of the MPs, they look affluent because maybe they have a car loan they'll get after getting into office. And as Africans and Zambians, we celebrate liabilities, we celebrate clothes, we celebrate cars, we celebrate all these things that really don't matter. And but it's just for a short period of time. After 5 years of being in office, and they are using that vehicle in their constituencies, especially for those whose constituencies are far in rural areas. By the time they are finishing their 4 years, they are tired, just like the vehicle they got on loan is also tired. If they don't have the opportunity to continue, that's how come you have MPs who have been in parliament for close to 25 years, because they don't see themselves surviving outside parliament. Why? Because they are drained every other day. 2-3 months of being out of parliament, you can't even recognize them. So what I'm saying is that there is an aspect of what we're discussing that is true. We need to focus on the system. We need the fight of against corruption, which is holistic, not the fight against corruption, which is a political tool to beat your opponents.
Is that something that, I mean, we're obviously going to elections next year, but is that the message that if we win in 2026, that having learned these lessons, that this is what we want to do?
Yes,
I've always said, and let me tell you what I've always said. I've always said, and I know no politician will ever agree with me because you're obviously afraid to lose votes, but I've always said, as somebody who has zero interest in getting into politics, I've always said that what we need is someone brave enough to come and say, we are going to revamp the civil service. We are going to cut as many people as we can, rejig the entire civil service, because what we've seen over the past 61 years is just not good enough.
Yes, but you see the solutions towards, for example, the revamping of the civil service. The reason why it has not been, accepted historically, it seems that it is anchored sometimes on wrong considerations. You understand? You come into office and all of a sudden you begin to think that the reason the civil service is the way it is because these are civil servants that belong to this political party. And sometimes dangerously so. There is even consideration that these civil servants are operating like this because they belong to this particular, ethnic grouping and all that. And slowly, beginning to invite alien but dangerous, undertones that sabotage a good idea of working in the civil service as a people of Zambia. Okay? What we need, Mr. Lucci, moving forward, is not a set of politicians and leaders who are going to be presenting new promises. It's rhetoric. Zambia is blessed to have to be a country that has some of the best smart men and women in terms of capacity and intellectual achievements. Okay, in every sector. When you go to other jurisdiction, you find that smart Zambians are celebrated. One of good lady who's basically now recognized in the UK, who was an economic advisor to Paul Kagame, for example. Dambisa Moyo. She's not the only one. There are many who may not have been as prominent and announced as she is, but they are all over the world. Okay? So when it comes to policy, when it comes to what we need to do, even if you just went to the set of policies of UNIP at the time that Kaunda was president, the good ones are still potent up to today. If you go to Chiluba, there are good policies that were packaged for this country to, at a fast rocket speed, be able to develop economically and otherwise. You can go to each and every president, including this one, who I personally consider many have come to agree is failed lamentably. There are some good things that he may have done, maybe implemented wrongly, but if you look at them objectively, you may find that if they were implemented in a different way, they could have delivered for this country. I think what we need is, if God can bless us to have, a set of leadership that is patriotic enough, that will look from a perspective of introspection to see how we have traversed from the past 60 years, where did we miss it? So that even when we tackle the issues of civil service, should not be from the perspective of these undertones of tribe, ethnicity, and political and so on, to put in place a system that encourages professionalism on the part of those that join the civil service, so that the issues of corruption are dealt with not from a perspective of political rhetoric. That's the solution. Two, as politicians, how is it that now we have gotten to a place where to aspire and seek political office is a life and death situation? Because there is no way, if at all you are seeking to serve, you would want to get in that office having named somebody, having paid, people to engage in violent activities and so on. What is the motivation? Why do you want that office so much that you can actually wield pangas and guns and so on? That's the question we should be asking ourselves. Why should I seek to be Secretary General, that because of wanting to be Secretary General I should name people? What is in this office that would warrant me shed blood? So it is all those issues that must be examined for our country to be whipped back to a place of decency, to focus on what is important other than some of these things that we are playing with. So, but as it were, we all have to keep on making efforts and attempts. There has even been a deliberate indoctrination that we unfortunately have accepted. People have preached for many years who have survived through politics that politics are dirty. And all of us accept as a citizen that politics are dirty. That philosophy only works as a blanket to justify the wrong things that people do in the name of politics. It can never be that public service is dirty. Public service is supposed to be a noble undertaking for those who offer themselves for it. And it should be done in such a way that the focus is the citizens, what you do for them to better their lives.
Is that why as a party, maybe just as opposition generally, I haven't heard much in terms of promises? Is that a new thinking that you have to say, listen, it's been done before, and those promises, as we've seen in the past 3-4 years, they haven't come to fruition. So maybe we're better off just not offering any promises.
I think for me, one of the things that impressed me on President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, obviously politics about communication and talking, but he seemed to have been shy to engage more in talk. Remember, he was even criticized for saying, wow, you're asking of a vision, I don't have a vision. I'm committed to the collective vision of Patriotic Front and espoused, by my leader. People cut off by saying I don't have my own vision, and they played around.
I made the argument that I don't think that you can be a leader without a vision of your own. You were sitting on the right where you're sitting when I made that argument.
But you see, the issue is that the moment you begin to promote individuals as a champion for this cause, it may sound myopic, but I think if we are, as a country, agree of the collective goal, collective vision, that the only thing that you argue about is how to implement the policy position on how to tackle this, but the vision still remain constant, then we'll be able to make progress. So you have Unip into government. Kaunda is deemed to be the vision carrier. His ideas and whatever he's thinking is what should go. And when Chiruba comes, whatever Kaunda was doing was rubbish. His vision cannot compare to mine. I have a better vision, and therefore everything is rubbish under Kaunda. And then you begin to follow this gentleman with his promises and so on and so forth. Everybody within the organization, including in MMD in this case, similarly by cultural arrangement, we are more inclined to follow an individual than to encourage systems to be strong to control and direct the individual. That's where the disparity is. So when he leaves office, even when it is within the same party, how come within the party of MMD, for example, we had Manawasa take over? What was the disposition? Chiruba is being fought, and many allegations are being raised. How is it that it is within the organization? It's like a new government has come in, but it's the same party. You understand what I'm saying? It only speaks to the fact that maybe we need to revisit that. Even institutions of government today, are you not concerned, Mr. Lucci, at the discussions and issues around the three arms of government? What is happening in Parliament? What is happening at the judiciary? Now, the expose in terms of how the executive are managing issues. It should be of concern. Why do we have institutions of government that are supposed to be strong, operating independent or at least autonomously to advance, for example, the principle of checks and balances?
None of you leaders have gone into office and said, this is what we want to do. We want to strengthen, these institutions. And for me, that's what I've said this before. I said this to, the current president when he was in opposition. I said to him once, I said, listen, what I would like to see outside of all these talks about the economic, all of these things, what I'd like to see is strong institutions. Because if you don't have strong institutions, then you failed. As a country, we failed because we're not going anywhere. You need to have a very strong ACC, one that is independent, one that does not have to answer to you as president. You need to have a strong DAC. You need to have a strong police. You need to have a strong judiciary. And unfortunately, over the 61 years, we just haven't been serious enough to actually make these institutions independent and strong enough that they are not under the will of the president. Yeah.
Unfortunately for Mr. Nakacinda Hichilema, he made fantastic, promises and commitments at the time that he was in opposition. And under his watch, the situation has even worsened. If you had that kind of discourse with him, the question that we all are asking.
But I've had this discourse with all of you.
Yeah, I understand. But I mean, you're talking to me as a but for him, he was vying to be president. And the first thing he did weeks after getting into office was to pass a statutory instrument 1123 to get all the law enforcement agencies, particularly SEC, the police, and others, to be directly under his office, contrary to what he was promising. And we have heard, unlike his, predecessor, who insisted, I don't want to interfere with the SEC. And he was being criticized because the opposition were pushing, how come you haven't arrested that one? How come? It's like he is the one who should go and arrest those who are alleged to be corrupt. He restrained himself from making comments and said that the SEC, police, everybody, operate independently. And was seen to be a weak leader. This one comes into office. There is even direct interference. SEC, can you operate quietly, arrest and whatever, or can you do this directly? Instructions being given, around law enforcement agencies, which is not supposed to be the case. Remember, I was arrested by the police after the president had a 2-hour press briefing discussing my expose about some of the activities which were going to threaten the principle of separation of powers. And I was arrested, transported to Solwezi and all that. I can only, as a citizen, take it that is because the president instructed. The police did not act out of their professional and independent judgment whether I had committed an offense. How many times have I been arrested? Over 22 times. I have been summoned to the police over 30 times. And each of the cases that have been given are cases to do with the talk of seditious practice. For example, we have a clear evidence of the fact that the maize that the government imported had toxins, which a professional journalist undertook some investigative activities and found that the chemical makeup of that was in the maize and meal was killing dogs, and obviously we could not quantify or verify the numbers of human beings that have been affected. I make a strong comment to call upon government to take in interest, because this amounts to genocide against your own citizens. Instead of taking what I've said in good stride, in one vein, Tabokawana admits, yes, there are these milling companies are even named, and confirms that whatever. Even the minister at the time, or what is his name, Elijah Muchima, also confirms. I even attempt, because it involves lives, I attempt to call the minister to say, you can't sit in that office when people are dying. What happens? Because of political consideration, they look at what I have said from the perspective that it is damaging for us as a government. Go and arrest him. Arrest me for what? For telling the truth? And I have to appear in court? So it is this approach to politics and to policy that is causing us to degenerate, go backwards instead of making progress. So the situation under UPND has worsened. I agree with you that there are issues that must be looked at from the collective as a people, and we must address them squarely. But you see, at any given time, when people are in office, those issues that must be looked at collectively as a people, they must have the courage to sit down and say, do we need an India? What fora can we create for Zambians to come and speak to these issues? Because then, using that fora, you can begin to run the country collectively, that this is the direction should take. Even if I left office, even if this set of leaders leave office, I think this we must agree we can never tolerate. How is it that today, the lives of millions of Zambians, by just one stroke of the American people through the ambassador, plugging out that aid, we are totally disoriented? 60 years down the line, how come we have to have everything supplied from foreigners? Everything. There's nothing we're producing. When did we discover there's HIV/AIDS? Over 30 or so years ago. We are still depending on ARVs and these medication from, outside the country. How is it that Indians and all these other, countries have always found a way in which they would do research and find, mitigation measures, whether medicine or otherwise, to be able to administer to their citizens to deal with the challenges other than depending on foreigners?
Because they focus on development.
Yes. So we are busy quarreling, and because we are so aid dependent, we are quarreling over petty issues. The mining sector has remained in the hands of foreigners for over 61 years before we were born, and 61 years after, even having produced competent hands to run these entities, we are still under the thumb of foreigners. How? Who can justify that? And we have a president in Nakacinda who came on the platform of saying, I'm a new generational leader, and you go and without any justification, and when you look at even just a scandal than the sector, Kabuswe called on this platform with that Chipoka Mrenga to challenge me. No, vendetta, this Indian has come, see in the next 1 month everything will be done. I challenged him, can we meet? It was Chimweka seated here. Mr. Kabuswe, can you come on this fora? After 1 month, I'll tell you there will still be a disaster in Chingola. Haven't I been justified? The answer is yes. Is there anything going on in KCM? The answer is no. What has happened with Mopani is a disaster. Is the company, the so-called company that came to invest in Mopani, anything that is credible? The answer is no. How can you have an investor who needs to be given a lift by government to come and invest in your country, and you how can we be making such disastrous decisions as a people? Surely. How? And we are now complaining over how much? $50 million only, which is 1.4 billion kwacha, which one small mine in the Republic of Zambia can produce us that $50 million every month. Every month. But here we are, totally devastated, the lives of people on the line, because our priorities are somewhere else. Petty arguments, petty quarrels, fights. You have a former president humiliated and embarrassed, mistreated, as though his service to this country for 7 years was all rubbish, all in the name of what? Politics. That man could have benefited Nakacinda had Nakacinda looked at this his governance approach from a perspective of patriotism, where you benefit from everybody. We can't have a country that kills its own talented people, kills its own people who have innovation. In this country, if you are doing business and are seemingly succeeding, you are either going to be accused of satanism. If not satanism, if you can't get anything, then corruption. If that's what we're doing, we don't want progress, and because we don't want progress at personal level, it has now become collective. We don't want progress at national level. We sabotage ourselves, and we seem to celebrate when foreigners succeed. So the Americans have said we're taking away our money. This is a wake-up call for everybody, especially politicians. Should we always be stuck when somebody was assisting us leave? How is it that we are comfortable to continue sucking from the breast of aid? How is it that we are continuously comfortable to run to IMF? How is it that the talk of Zambian government is always about being bailed out, even when we have enough that God has given us to be able to come out of this situation? As young man going towards his 40s, he comes, of course, the method through which he got into government may not really, in a democratic arrangement, be supported. That's not the issue. But at least the decisions he has made, Traore, in Burkina Faso, within a year and some months, he has been able to pay debt. He has cleaned up the balance sheet of Burkina Faso. What was the decision? We have our resources. Can we control the resources? Can we come to the to the market, the global market, on an equal footing? We come with our resources. Come with your money. Can you trade? Pay
fair value.
Fair value for what you are getting from us. Simple decisions. When ECO said, Mopani, you the investors are, if you have failed to run, we are able to run it, and you got Mopani. You know the people that fought ECO? It's Zambians. That Mopani alone, looking at the investment and the lifespan of that mine in the hands of Zambians, we would not be dealing with the $50 million aid that has been plucked out and we're crying all over. We should have been able to use that mine to be able to even give the debt. Coupled with KCM, you know that under the liquidator, not only under Miringo, but even in time past, when there was another person who was put in charge of that mine before the so-called investors were coming, the suppliers, workers were being paid without any disruption. The disruption of payments and suppliers only came when the so-called investors came, who are supposedly expected to bring more money into the mine. But that's where the difficulties came. So I think there's something wrong among ourselves which needs to be addressed. And my diagnosis is that we need another, big push towards patriotism collectively as a people, but also that God should bless us after 2026 to have a set of leaders that are patriotic, ready to do the right thing, even if it costs them an election, even if it costs them whatever incentives you can talk about. That's the way we need to go. When you do the right thing, you don't have to campaign. The Traore of Burkina Faso is, by just the actions he has taken and the benefits so far in Burkina Faso towards his people, he is now a hero. I was privileged to go to West Africa a few months ago where there was some immigration. Not even the leader who was elected in that country was being celebrated as much as Traore was being celebrated. They are not celebrating Traore because he carries a gun. They are celebrating Traore because he has done the right thing which other people are afraid to do. And we are saying, can we summon courage to do the right thing?
I want to read your question. It's a little long, but I want to read your question. This is from Chewe Zindola. He says, our biggest weakness in Zambia is we look at things from a political lens. Both the ruling party and opposition look to blame each other. It's important for us to look at issues from a Zambian point of view. What we seem to lack is patriotism. It is wrong and irresponsible for us to say the PF or the UPND failed on issues. We need to start having the difficult conversations and ask what drives people to corruption. In my view, it's poverty. We generally have low incomes. Even people in formal employment have low incomes, yet the wealthy are extremely wealthy. When we deal with the root cause of poverty reduction, I strongly believe we will continue to fumble as a people. In my narrow view, discussions between opposition should be about if this policy was implemented, we would reduce poverty faster. So my question to the SG, what major policy do they have to improve wealth in this country?
Major policy, first of all, the economy must be owned by Zambians. The economy must be in the hands of Zambians. We should begin to celebrate the prosperity of the citizens of the Republic of Zambia. That's one thrust as a leadership we must not shy away from promoting. If there's an opportunity for Mr. Lucci to become a billionaire in dollar terms, even if he's the only one we can produce, let's push with everything to produce, because after all, your money will be localized. There is no way, Mr. Lucci, if you became a billionaire, you eat all that money. It's not possible. that money eventually has to be benefit workers, benefit those you buy from, benefit. It's a chain. That's how the economy, improves. How is it that the Chinese, they come to Africa, but they still bank in China? And they even push that for us to do all the transactions, they force governments, because obviously now with the economic strength, they'll force governments to even introduce the Bank of China in Zambia, because the principle remains simple, straightforward. The monies every Chinese generates across the world has to end up in what? China. And if it goes back to China, it strengthens their currency and they are able to compete favorably. The position in Zambia first is that the economy must be in the hands of Zambians. That is fundamental, and it will immediately deal with the poverty of our people. The trick which you fell in 1989, 1990 of going full throttle 100% privatization without balancing it with the need to have, of course, private capital, but also to have the Zambian people through government to maintain a share within the industrial base. That radical decision is what came and wiped out our industrial base, that we cannot produce anything. I remember I was joking with one member of parliament. I don't want to embarrass him, but today maybe he may permit to mention his name, Mwalimu Simfuko. He used to be member of parliament from Bala. He used to be our chairman in the budget committee at parliament. I'll joke with him that one day, Chair, I'll come with the tree bags, the traditional wear that usually I use during Kushefe Bangwena. Because there's nothing that is produced locally that we wear, that we use. So here, Mr. Lucci, from the lotion you used, the soap you used, the clothes we're wearing, in and out, they are all foreign. And we are proud to even go and buy. But do you know what it is you are doing? You are actually exporting jobs, because the textile industry in the country where these clothes we are wearing are coming from are thriving. We have the best climate. We produce some of the best, raw material, in this case, cotton and all these things. But we don't promote. There's no thrust that speaks to patriotism, because even empowering Zambians is part of the virtue of patriotism. A desire to make sure that the sum total of the economy first must be in the hands of Zambians. Then they can make a choice to partner with foreigners. But we can't have a situation where the sum total of our economy, you are even proudly doing so as a president, as a government, to usher your economy in the hands of foreigners, and you think you have achieved. And we are proud to be praised by foreigners. I don't want to sound racist, but there are politicians who think that taking a photo with a white man is such a great achievement in life. You understand what I'm saying? That kind of mentality should never find itself in government. That's the argument. So the first policy from my brother who sent a message is that we must first insist that the economy must be in the hands of Zambians. And what we did, which has led to us losing the industrial base in this country, we need to revisit that. And Patriotic Front started doing so. We had, remember, a policy that we should at least have one industry in each province. The cashew nut plantation in Western Province was leading to us having a processing plant in Western Province. We had the food processing company that was established in Northwestern Province, because obviously it was understood that with pineapples and everything, that was the thrust, because it is only when you are producing, semi or finished goods that will be competitive on the market. That's how it works. We can't have today producing nothing as a country and expect that the currency will improve. It's not a bragadabra. Misaka Indichirema came here, he was telling you and the Zambian people that when you vote for me around 10 hours, by 14 hours the currency will improve. And everybody is clapping, how would that work? is there some magic for my village that will help me second the H number to bring the currency down? No, the currency only works, goes down when you are able to produce and go and export, and when forests come into your country, it strengthens your local currency. That's how it works. There's no magic, there's no abracadabra here. The reason why the currency will never improve, they are hoping that IMF will give them a little injection of some dollars which will reflect here, and then it will try and bring the kwacha down. That's temporal. The real solution is that let's begin to produce, let's begin to sell that which will be marketable on the international market, and we'll get all the forex that we require for our local currency to be strengthened.
So I want to make this point, and I had mentioned that Mr. Sampa will be joining us. He has just walked in, but I want to make this point to you because a lot of people are making this point, online. They're making the point of saying, and this is where there's you could say that there's a bit of history teaches us something. A lot of people keep saying that, look, Mr. Nakacinda and his friends, his colleagues, were in power for 7 years, 10 years if we count the 3, but all the things that he says today, all the things about why wasn't this in local hands, why, we have all these resources, why did they then go out and borrow all the funds that they went and borrowed, why was there stories of, corruption, why were all of these elements there? It's not like he's clothed in never having been in government, but no, this is a party that has already been in government. What do you say to people like that?
Mr. Sata, when he got into government, and I think my colleague who has just joined, Hon Sampa, authoritatively will also speak to it, because at some point he was privileged to have been a deputy minister of finance. Mr. Sata's thrust when he got into government, and people tried to suggest that he was operating haphazard, but he knew his plan. First, there was a dedication of 5 to 10 years to invest in infrastructure. Okay? And investing in infrastructure required capital. And in business, just like in governance, we must be comfortable. And it is all right to use other people's money. Those who are in the banking, sector will tell you that there's no business that runs without other people's money. It's an issue of making sure that the other people's money you're getting is cheaper, but also that where you invest, you're guaranteed that there will be a return. And the investment of Patriotic Front for the money that we borrowed, from the perspective of Secretary as part of government, is that it went towards capital investment. The money we borrowed, there is tangible evidence out there of infrastructure, and there's no country that has developed globally without infrastructure, particularly in the road.
Do you admit? So you said something. You said something very interesting earlier on. You talked about how in the early parts of the UPND government they came in. Maize was sold, and all of these things. The one thing that I never heard from them, and I still haven't heard it, and maybe it might benefit people if they did, is to come back to the people and say, "Listen, we made a mistake." Do you today? Can you say that you pushed as a party that you pushed to overdevelop too quickly, and because of that you borrowed way too much, that maybe we should have been a little more careful with how much capital expenditure we were investing in that would be then able for us to pay back?
Even the rhetoric that we borrowed too much is abused both locally and outside. Our equity as a country is over and above what you can say overborrowed. Okay, it's just that
in terms of paying back.
No. We have discussed a larger part of our discussion around how the economy is structured. Yeah. Are you convinced that if the economy is in our hands, we don't really have to even struggle about this debt? I'll give you an example of Traore, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But again,
allow me to learn.
Okay.
Burkina Faso was said to be indebted, and the debt is insurmountable, and so on, until one guy came on the scene and said, that myth is fake. We can pay this money within a year and some months. Did he do it? Yes. The so-called overborrowing and the figures are mentioning a few billions of dollars. When you look at the genuine and equity of this country, just one sector of our economy can be able to sort out that debt.
But you had 10 years, but you were still pushing for IMF, and that's the only point I want to make. That you still had, about a 10-year period. Fine, maybe in terms of repayment, it could have been the last 3-4 years.
Okay,
but you were still trying to engage IMF.
The conversation you are leading me to is the very one you are debunking.
Yeah.
That why do we discuss through partisan?
No, I'm not. This is not a partisan line. I'm just saying that
because
that people will say that, listen, Mr. Nakacinda makes some very valid points that if in our own hands we would be able to pay back, but they had an opportunity to do so. Why weren't they able to do so?
Okay, so maybe
that's the only argument.
Okay, maybe to curtail the conversation, because our leader, Dr. Edgar Chaganon, came openly to the public, apologized for the things that we may not have done and things that we did which were wrong, and that we have undertaken the process of introspection, rebranding in certain areas and so on. Could it be that it is acceptable for us to also admit that in terms of approach around these issues, we have learned that had we done certain things faster, because by the time we are dealing with, for example, Mopani, to get it in the hands of Zambians, to get KCM, it was towards the end our journey in our tour of duty in government, and it was politicized. But I can tell you today, it makes sense, I'm sure even to Zambian people, had Mopani still remained in our hands and encouraged a few Zambians with that equity, get them some shares, whatever percentage, they go in the market to go and find capital and they invest. That mine would have been producing whatever it is producing, the money will still remain in Zambia. And just Mopani alone, Mopani alone, if the money is locally coming back to this country, because the products in from Mopani or from copper today, the prices are skyrocketing as if there is no tomorrow. We should have been directly benefiting, but we go and get the so-called investors who are not even known, the ones we are even supposed to give a lift to come and invest in our country. You send a plane to go and collect them. You understand what I'm saying? That's a scandal. But in answering the question, there are many positive things that we did as Patriotic Front, which our friends who are in government today cannot demonstrate. We borrowed, there's something to show. Okay. Had we been allowed to continue beyond 2021, I can tell you, some of these ideas we're talking about would have been implemented, and we started implementing, and possibly the difficulty not to be as it is today. Our friends said, when they come into government, we are a reckless government, they'll come and solve all the problems. But today the situation, we can't even say it's worse. They have created the new problems that we may have to sharpen our skill to come and navigate around the problems they've created, but continue on the trajectory of development at the same time. Okay.
Just speaking about problems, Mr. Sampa is here. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Luchi, and good morning, dear listeners, wherever you're joining us.
I probably haven't phrased the sentence correctly. I didn't mean that you're a problem. I just meant in terms. Let me explain what I meant in case people think I've got this wrong. So a lot of people say, Mr. Sampa, they say that in a way you weakened opposition, opting to have this conference, install yourself as president, in a way sort of weaken the Patriotic Front and weaken opposition. Obviously now you've obviously endorsed the former president. You've given back the party in a way, and there's just now one party and not two different factions. But do you understand when people are a little frustrated with some of the happenings of the past 2 years in terms of opposition and your role in it?
Thank you, Luchi, and again, good morning, dear listeners. I'm honored to be here with my brother, the Secretary General of the PF, Hon Raphael Nakacinda. Your question, Luchi, that I am to blame. Right, I accept. Blame me for everything. I am the causer of the opposition and what transpired the last few years. The Americans have a very good saying. They say it's not how you fall that matters, it's how you rise. In any gathering of human beings, it's almost guaranteed that when you assemble, or as you assemble, you're gonna fight. the trees will rub depending on the direction of the wind. Even in our homes, we all rub shoulders or fight, unless you're not human. Even in our homes with our wives, but it's how you get up or resolve the issue. So I take the blame, and it's because of what you've said. I had been listening a lot to the people out there, most of the listeners, and for that very reason, they told me the best way is unite with your brothers. The best way is unite with President Edgar Lungu. The best way is unite with Honorable Given Lubinda and Honorable Nakacinda and all other people. Unite with Honorable Nkanduluo, unite with Honorable Jim Kapata and many others. And I listened. As a politician, God gave me skills to listen to the people, because I'm not a leader for myself. I lead the people, and people that I lead give me signals on which direction to take and what to do. It's not about what I want. So I listened to the people. I was more than happy to shelve my personal ambitions and do what the people want. It's football, Luchi. It's the second half now. So if what I did weakened the opposition in the first half, we have the entire second half, and anything does happen. And the game now is at 0-0. UPND is 0, PF is 0, and we're going to the second half. And the players now warmed up, and we have senior players and junior players, and we are rejuvenated as a PF. So we'll fight second half even better and finish the game in August 2026. It will not even go in penalties.
Can I ask you, because a lot of people are curious about this, they've been curious, since October the 24th, that public holiday, when you had this convention. Were you working with the government, with the party? How is it that you were able to mobilize this huge security around Mulungushi? Do you just want to, I don't know if you're able to, because a lot of people really want to know.
I don't know if you really want to take us in the past. The past must stay in the past. We are looking forward to play the second half. The first half is gone, and the whistle was blown for the second half. So it's irrelevant what transpired. We have united. We are one. I've never joined the UPND. Never will join the UPND. The police are for everybody. They are not for the ruling party. They are not for the opposition. They are for everybody. So if I ask for their services and they are available, it's because I have a right as a Zambian. But I'm not keen to talk about the past. Okay. It's the past. We have risen, we've dusted ourselves, and we're more united than ever. That's the strength of the PF.
Has there been, and I don't know whether it's SG who should answer this one, but has there been, forgiveness within the party? I know that there were some members who, were facing certain expulsions, suspensions. There were members of parliament, who were facing these expulsions. Has everyone been forgiven now? Or are those, issues still there?
Well, I think specifically we're discussing, the coming together of Honorable Sampa and obviously ourselves. Like he has put it, is in the interest of the nation, in the interest of the party. And it would be erroneous. We didn't go to the public and say, now we are starting a process of reconciliation and this is how it's going to play out. No. We engaged ourselves privately, resolved our issues privately. The only thing that we have come to the public with is that all the differences that you perceived and otherwise have been resolved. The only thing we are calling upon the Zambian people to give us is a confidence that the decisions that have been made and the working together as one unit is in their interest. The Zambian people have been yearning to have a credible, united opposition, and the starting point is Patriotic Front. We also, as the big brother in the opposition, reaching out to other political parties that let's respond to what the Zambian people are saying. The only thing is, as it were, it was honest conversations, and honest conversations that has led to an honest, healing process and coming together. like he has put, it's not a seamless process. There are some who may look like they are not very clear about what is going on. They may criticize and so on, but it's part of the journey. The journey of those who are in public office, as it were. People assume a right to make comments. Some of them make conclusions. Some of them, there are people who just sit at home. They have nothing to do, and their innovation is around finding who to criticize. But at the end of the day, we have a country to run. We have a duty as opposition to provide checks and balances now, but also to be able to prepare ourselves as a political party working with others to present a credible set of leaders, men and women, that will be able to help the country moving forward. The issues that we're discussing, the disastrous development of having to have the Americans plug up in aid of $50 million, and the whole country is shaking. Of course, in the immediate, their lives are threatened, but in the long term, it exposes the fact that 61 years after independence, we still have to be very dependent to a point where $50 million aid, when it's taken away, the entire sector is really devastated. I think it's an indictment on all of us as Zambians. By now, we should have been able to meet some of these obligations.
But in unity, this is unity of the party now.
Yes.
You cannot discount members of parliament.
Yes.
Now, if there are some members of parliament who maybe have a question mark hanging over them in terms of some of the things that were said by one faction when there were factions, are those being resolved quietly? Is that what you're saying? That those are being resolved quietly?
Yes.
Even though their expulsions, their suspensions were made on a public forum.
As Secretary General, I can tell you that there are people who took advantage of the situation with Honorable Sampa. They were not even doing that from a perspective that they either supported or Sampa or whatever. They just took advantage of that situation to advance a personal agenda. We are dealing with this matter, from the actual situation that it is. Okay, we are also have made a deliberate decision to, bestow and entrust Honorable Sampa with the responsibility of being leader of opposition in Parliament. And we are confident that he should be able to, whip members of Parliament. There are two aspects. One, to foster even a greater unity within the party, to make sure that every facet of Patriotic Front, first, is pulling in the same direction. And the facet here has to do with, first, of course, the Central Committee under the leadership of President Edgar Chagalungu. And second, it is members of Parliament under his leadership. We have mayors and council chairpersons, we have councillors, we have structures across the country. As Secretary General, my responsibility has been to make sure that those that may have been, with Honorable Sampa and they were displaced, that there is genuine unity from the top going downwards up to the section, so that those who may have moved and treating each other as rivals and so on, that there is healing up to that level, because we need unity even at a minute level of the political party for this machinery to work.
The reason I'm asking about the MPs in particular is because obviously we're going into a period where there is some legislation that might be on the floor of the House that obviously requires, I suppose, those that are PF MPs to be whipped in a certain direction. Now, if there are still question marks hanging over their heads, then there's obviously a possibility that they may find themselves voting in a different direction. That's why, with
our support, we have placed that responsibility on his laps, and I think he can comment.
Okay.
Let me come in, Luchi. Thank you. First of all, this process, it needed reconciling and forgiving each other, and includes MPs as well. But where an MP doesn't want to reconcile, where an MP has insisted on being defiant, those then remain expelled. I think that's where even the beginning of misunderstanding began with my colleagues at the time, Chavinga and Ingona, when I kept telling them, let's reconcile with the MPs. Remember, there were 9 MPs that were expelled. I said, let's reconcile. And they kept refusing. And they said, let's go in a consent and kill that case in court. They kept refusing. I kept telling them, write to the Speaker to to say we've forgiven them, so there's no by-election. But obviously we had defined agenda. Later on I came to realize I had to write a letter myself to the Speaker to say, as President, I've forgiven these 9, as President then, these 9 MPs. But we know Deputy Speaker Moyo, in his ruling, said, no, we don't listen to forgiveness from the President of the party, only to the Secretary General. I don't know which law he got that from. And indeed, that's how come the appeal went through. He was overruled, that he overstepped. So we were reconciled with the MPs, but there are those, they have sold their souls. They are determined. They don't want to reconcile. So it's in the hands of the SG. Their expulsion that he has executed. When it comes to the registration, worry not. We've done our homework. The numbers that we have working together as PF is enough. We have discounted those. We already know those that have been paid to vote for the constitution amendment, which is not in the interest of the people, because it's coming just a year before elections. What's the hurry? Why can't the UPND wait until elections are gone? No, we know they want to sneak in something that will basically make the elections in 2026 academic and sustain themselves in power. So when we remove those, I don't even want to dignify them and mention them, but they are known. They are about 7. We have already counted them in our books. They are not PF with us. They will not vote with us. They will vote with the UPND. Even if they do that, Luchi, they'll still not get the 2/3 majority. Will beat them to it. That constitution will flop. The same way they made the Bill 10 flop, their Bill 11 will flop and will come out there dancing. We'll beat them to it. So we are united, both in and outside the house.
Okay. Let me go to the phone lines. I know a lot of people do want to talk to you. I just want to apologize to our callers, but I needed to just get clarification from Mr. Sampa just as you walked in on some of those issues. But let's go to the phone lines. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Hello, Lucho. Good
morning. Morning. What's your name, sir?
Lucho, can you get me loud and clear?
I can hear you, sir. What's your name?
Okay, please let me just make my contribution. This is Niji. I am calling from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Well, my question is directed to Honorable Miley Sampa. Mr. Sampa, I hope at last that you can get me loud and clear. Can you please tell the nation, Mr. Sampa, if at all you were ever sponsored by President Hakainde Hichilema to cause confusion in the patriotic front? You are on the record of having accused Robert Chivinga of being sponsored, of which you were also accused. Please tell the nation without fear, favor, or ill will. Politics aside. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Meji. Let me take another call. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning, Luchi.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Washukenda SG Bandiva Nakacinda.
Go ahead, Madam Piri. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Sampa.
Good morning, my dear honorable sister.
Yes, I'm so happy a true Catholic. Maybe you didn't realize this. When we were in Lent, some of us were praying to Arifunga Kweba Tifiti Achitika, Sichitike, and it came, if you know, soon after Lent. We thank God for you coming back to the party, and we love you. After the meeting, Taibula Kushenkana, as you rightly said, we move on, we soldier on to liberate the people of Zambia. Luchi, allow me just to add on what Honorable Nakacinda was talking about. People might not know cassava growing, and outgrowers farmers were identified to that project. There was another project which was started in Eastern Province of having a fruit company, particularly in Katete. If we were still in power, the locals could have done better industrialization. That's what we are looking at. That's how you saw we started the milling plant. I am a UPND. We had one in the Southern Province, one in Muchinga, one in Lusaka, near my neighborhood. If we were in power today, all the provinces could have had urban milling plants, just like we had our storage facilities here at UL.
Okay.
And as I conclude, for people to see that either if it's President Edgar Lungu who is coming back because the case is still in court, and we have confidence that the story can be overturned, or if it's plan B, we'll start off from where we left. You know that when they sold Abama Shinziak cereals, they were taken to Kenya in Nakuru, and I'm concluding.
I'm going to cut you off, but thank you very much. Thank you very much for calling in. Let me take as many other callers as I can. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. On that line 226-841-0978-895-895. Hello, good morning. As well. Hello, good morning. Hello. Good morning, sir. What's your name? Yes, Pastor Malan.
Sampa Nakacinda, ina nyingu kwa wino sana basampepe bakide yakwe ukwe bakinga mwese kani itapamu nganamu ikiba ikipaniti subilo abena zambe bakwite ikipani itaPF itakwete umutima wabalanda itakwete umutima wabantu nokulanguruko kwe bati mwina Zambia onse aikala bwino amaplani ba PF mwali ambili amaplani asuma sana mwali kongere mpya development yale monike mwali potendalama mwina Zambia onse ale mona mwasta mwisigayo kiba UPNG lero bana yumpira po unga wazede yes niba PF yonse amaplani ayo so le sale mipala atupate fo mutima umo ba position wonse ifeni apaida kwa mutima umo nga twasale kapanti wa UPNG basapitaba tukatampo kuli abana bisu ngana mumona amasakta wa UPNG yonse bali pasalangana bulandi wa butushi so ino ba PF ba SP mkwate mutima unga umo kwe bati kirwani fikaye effort ko teni ba UPNG mpaide sanpa mkana to tram kwai.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vashimalan. Let me take two more, then I'll let you respond. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. What's your name?
Thank you so much. Dr. Mainza himself, calling you direct from Atembo from the Revamping.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
You know, PF guys Nakacinda and Sampa, you are talking to yourself. There is no more Zambian who can trust you. There is no one Zambian who can trust you. Guys, you are a bitter guys and you are a liar person. Look at the freedom now we have this time. There is no bashing in Zambia. There is no violence in Zambia. Comrades, let us be honest. They will rule this country. Honest. Mahunda mzemata rasile la wana kusema yoko papasa na mamimba government ya bwera atandizira. Cash forward government ya bwera atandizira. Now the Sampa, tell your friend you are staying in Kanema constituency. Come here in 2015. You will see the Christianity manga. In Linda, even including Bonaventure, not with you. This is the first there right now. I'm talking to you. We are enjoying in this government. And the Zambians, they can't allow you to bring division or whatever in UPNP. They can't allow you. Now tell us now, Sam. I have to do my in that. Because you are treated. Suppose you are not Sampa. You carry the way you are. We don't even know better. So then, actually, the moment you make this good alliance, like that. So we can trust you as anymore now. Enough is enough. This time is for UPNP. Simple. You can let us try.
Okay. All right. Dr. Mainza, thank you very much. Let me get you to respond. Do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think I will say Honorable Sampa that the trouble to answer questions like from Miji and Hatembo is unnecessary. I think the Zambian people are looking forward to us progressing from this end. The happenings and whatever transpired, all those who may have taken advantage or otherwise done anything, chosata chisadidandani, muine, that's the Nyanja saying. For us here, we want to be progressive. Honorable Mumbipiri has helped to categorize some of the very progressive ideas that were being implemented under Patriotic Front. Bashimanama, he kudos to Honorable Sampa, the fact that we were able to get to where we are today. And I think moving forward, as a party, we want to be forward-looking at what will be helpful to the Zambian people and getting ready for governance. The internal matters that we're dealing with are such that we have resolved all matters in relation to what people are trying to advance at their factions. Our reconciliatory process and documents that have been prepared have been presented to the court. We are waiting just basically for a final tick on it. There is somebody who asked me a question, suppose the court doesn't do that. I said it's impossible. How can a couple in a home, for example, they differed and sued each other, and in the process they come and say, no, darling, I think we overstepped, and what will they reconcile? Then they go to court and the court says, no, you can't reconcile. Because I think you fought too much. Actually, you disclosed in this affidavit that this one you are the boyfriend, or this one has a girlfriend, and all kind of thing. No. When a step has been taken, remember the judiciary we run and the system we run, you are a lawyer, is an adversary judicial system. It is moved, the court is moved by parties, either one or both parties. If the one who has sued and the one who's been sued come to agree outside court and come to the court, is one of the celebrated principles within our jurisdiction, that when parties agree and come to resolve, the court doesn't even have to, because it would defeat the principle of adversarial system, because the court is not supposed to have an interest in a matter. We are here, Honorable Mosam. We reconcile. And why should somebody say don't reconcile?
Why we not can?
I just want to make this. Fred asked us an interesting question. He says, in terms of the reconciled parties, have you amended the records at the registrar? Because maybe you can correct us. Were records changed? So have those records been amended?
Right, Luchi. So you see, when two factions politically are fighting, and there was a number of court cases where I took them to court, they took me to court. One particular one is where the 9 MPs took me to court. So we've reconciled ourselves, as the SG has said, but then because the matters were in court, we've gone to the court and given them evidence that we've reconciled. I have signed, I've reconciled. The other parties also have signed, we've reconciled. It simplified it. If you were undergoing a divorce and you had filed in court, husband and wife, you had filed in court that you went through that divorce, and then next you reconcile, you go back to the judge and say, no, we're back in one home. If anything, we are number 8. So we've reconciled. It's not for the judge to just saying, but you were got a girlfriend, or you cannot reconcile. So it's irretrievable, irrevocable. It's just a process that has to be ratified by the judge, and we're waiting for the judge to append that reconciliation. But if you allow me, SG said Dr. Mainza, but never Mainza that under UPND now, people are enjoying. He himself, he says he's enjoying, and there's a freedom. I don't know which freedom. Cadres are still there attacking people. What freedom when people are experiencing hunger? What freedom when money in circulation is not there? Prices have gone up of mini meal. when PF left government, the minimum was 120. Now it's 450 kwacha. There are no jobs. There is ZESCO load shedding. Despite excessive water, we are told now Zambezi district has been cut off because Zambezi river is flooded. Victoria Falls, the water is plenty of it, but there's still load shedding. Why? Because they're still exporting power. As my colleague says, they prioritize the investors and outsiders and leave the people last. Fuel price, we left it at 17 kwacha per liter. It's now 37 kwacha per liter, over 100% increment.
27. Just to correct you, 27.
27.
Yeah.
27. Still, it's over 80% increment. Foreign exchange, as my brother the SG said, we were taught when Edgar Lungu was handing over power at Hero Stadium, the foreign exchange, the kwacha, $1 to 1 kwacha was about 17 kwacha. Manje rikuti hapa 28 kwacha luchi. So what has happened to appreciate that 14 hours? So how are people enjoying? The people have no food to eat. If now you don't, even in Kalamba, nafika kumana sometimes because we are sharing with the guards, sharing with the maids, with the gardeners, one bag, and we end up buying kapamela, so we are all feeling it. Before, every month I would buy a bag of minimum for all the domestic workers. Now it's very expensive. But this is where Dr. Mines is saying Zambians are enjoying. No, he himself is enjoying because there's a UPND cadre and official even brought up this cash for work thing. This is a scam. You know, they've done is they take officials in their awards and they list them on the cash for work, and those are the ones they pay the money. Go and get that list of cash for work just there in Kanyama, and we list them there. We mention all of them cash for work. You know which party they belong to if you are a real politician. So that's just a conduit of abusing government money to pay their cadre. So he is enjoying, and may he continue enjoying. The majority of people of Zambia are suffering, but their suffering is coming to an end August 2026.
Okay. Hello, good morning.
Hello?
Hello, good morning. What's your name, sir?
Hello?
Hello, good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Mr. How are you?
I'm alright, thank you. What's your name, sir?
This is Sampa Jamba calling you from Rusaka.
Says Yamba, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Sampa, good morning, Mr.
Good morning, Mr. Ziamba.
Yeah, I want to find out from Mr.
Let's try this other line. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Rush.
Good morning, sir. What's your name?
This is Mulenga, the voice of Rapulaba Sampa Mulishan. Hon Nakacinda. Otuatotera turefuwa feresare mwisho mutende pakwe bati mololo kesho mukasangwe kweko bakainde ekiremu bakawina mu 2026. Iyo gurupu y'abarungu icyakubarira ko mulingire mwasumira okwe bati mwalifuma mu power. Icya namba 2 mulingire okusumira okwe bati mwakabwerere mu power. Icya namba 3 mulingire okwishuba okwe bati history ya Zambia yera ndati. Abaya tababwerere po ba unity barire bayiririra. Kwari MMD bushe kwari kware monekati MMD kuti ayifumyapo. But rizimu yaba basata balale mu kibote bari bombere okufumyapo MMD ayiririra. Ngani barungu bena imwe. Imwe ni mwabo ipate yene ikapwana omusebanya.
Mr. Manda, is there a question? Is there an actual question? Is there a question?
In conclusion, nare unfwa again in push a question. Nare unfwa statement yaba chavinga balandi yati. Ine mirandisha abakoti eronga na rusa nakula sta appeal until 2031 okusta appeal. So pali question yaba chavinga bati mwasa basampero ngachitire communicate na balungu. Pali question yaba chavinga tibakula chitomulando appeal until 2031. Conspiration communicate na balungu pali yo apiu
Okay. Mr. Mulenga, thank you very much. I think we get the question, but thank you very much for calling. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. What's your name, sir?
Good morning.
Morning. What's your name?
My name is Tani Zulu.
Chitani Zulu, go ahead.
Yes, I'm calling from Jim.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I just want to encourage all the people are saying CF that available, whatever. The major opposition is the common man, which is the compound there. Wakanyama, Ukabanana. These they don't know what is the economy they're talking about. Kaunga. Katakasara is picking up for road, but yeah, subways are active subways. Yeah, after CF, now the USA ambassador is below the edge from Zambia. Yes, I did. That's Gonzalez. If it's drawn the edge, they cut the edge. So, can we have a fear to Sampa Nakacinda clarify? Who are people here now?
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. 2268410978895. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Morning, how are you, Mr. Moderator?
I'm very well, thank you. What's your name?
My name is Philemon from Chiturika, Zambia. Am I audible, Mr. Moderator?
Yeah, loud and clear. Go ahead with your contribution, sir.
Thank you. Allow me at this juncture to completely disagree with your guests there who are misleading the country for cheating the nation to send Gamatu voter come 2026 to Kawami into. These are the guys who killed the economy to negative 2.8 to 4.0 if you like. We should celebrate. Growing an economy means refurbishing of Ama roads. You know, these economic activities will come to fruition because most of the projects under your regime, under Mr. Lungu, stalled. What did you say that Tengarama? All the projects that are 60% should be stored. And these are the mistakes we are trying to rectify. These are the mistakes we are trying to address. Again, somebody who is addressing it in just you are busy offloading Ubufi on this beautiful platform. So I'm urging you that you should agree that you are a tested leader who cannot be given a chance to come and finish off what you left. Corruption was rampant, was rife under your regime. We saw Ama Ukwa bag,
Mr.
65 million. Have you seen?
Yeah,
this
okay,
is what we
Mr.
call
Philemon,
fighting corruption.
Mr. Philemon, thank you very much. I don't think we need to get angry. Do you want to respond? A lot of people seem to have this feeling that a party that was in government previously will not return.
But you know what is interesting is that the UPND members are trying to hide. This so-called Philemon from Chiturika village. This is my relative. You know, but the other Gamubora Bantangarala Mambauti, the many in Moribanda, and you argue your case than to hide and try to, you know, say I'm from this and that, and you can even tell from your accent that this is my proper. But
I don't have such accent in my village called Chiturika.
But the truth of the matter is that look, the UPND should not be in the mode of cascading in the manner they do what the opposition are saying, and they have also taken an absolute an attitude of absolute authority to determine what would happen in 2026. They are not the determinants, it's the Zambian people. Mr. Stanley has said something very important. The real opposition is not necessarily political parties, it's the ordinary Zambians. The only thing as political parties we're doing is to align our policies and articulate that which we think should have been done, what we did, and that which we project should be done. But at the end of the day, it is the people of Zambia. The second opposition is the economy. There is something you can never argue against, like Honorable Sampa said. The prices of commodities are speaking for themselves. There's nothing the UPND can say, you know, is compare and contrast. We don't even have to remind the Zambian people about compare and contrast because they can compare and contrast on their own. When they go to buy mini meal, there's no one who goes with a card of UPN to go and get cheaper mini meal. We all buy the expensive mini meal. We all are paying for the expensive fuel. We're all paying for the expensive commodities. Life is tough. Life is difficult. Here at Radio Phoenix, the Radio Phoenix we knew 4 years ago, and how people used to look fresh, and you can tell that Nowadays, you can tell that the economy is biting. You know what I'm saying? I'm not embarrassing anybody, but that's the reality. Even us, but you know, things are tough.
I feel like a lot of people in this building might disagree with you. Unfortunately, I got married, so you know how that life is.
Of course, congratulations. But the reality is that it's something else. There was a time you would go, and today you find that on the streets.
Yes.
You used to be privileged to be MP, minister, then mayor. The people, when they saw the mayor of Lusaka a few years ago, it was celebration. Today, when you meet colleagues on the streets, they don't even ask for money. First, they will keep you for 15 to 20 minutes explaining how things are tough and how that you should work hard and all that. Ordinary people. And then you tell them, but why so because they can deliver now? They don't even want to talk to us. You understand what I'm saying? They can't even. So such kind of leaders in government, I can tell you, they are only headed for disaster. What happened in Monze yesterday, I felt for, is it the other day? I felt for Aka in the HLM. You are having Docas mothers given placards. You know, in their minds, they think that they are scoring. Given placards to try and project the person they are managing away from reality is Aka in the HLM. Today, UPND, under the political strategy of Levin Goma, they are printing placards on gross paper, taking to Kaputa, taking to villages. And even the person carrying the placard can't even read. But they are doing it for Aka in the HLM because usually presidents are the most powerful but the most vulnerable. And if you don't find a way to counter-check what is happening, they will deceive you, the very people you are with, and make you believe that everything is okay. Aka in the HLM is living in a bubble. The reality on the ground is that things are bad. What has happened with the Americans' pronouncement, things will even get worse. He's supposed by now to have addressed the nation, because at least those that are captured, 1.3 million Zambians at the risk of losing their lives because ARVs that we don't produce, by just that one decision, there will not be ARVs in hospitals. And that position should cause any president to lose their intestine. Because this is terrible. You understand what I'm saying? And then we have cadres coming and watch a space. And the Honorable Sampa, I think we have taken a stance of being honest. Nice it is, and
they don't learn from the past. And Luchi, let me just, actually politics in Zambia, I've seen Luchi, politicians, they tend to repeat the same mistake, the same mistakes that we made as PF. And as my colleague has said, that our president, former president Edgar Chagwa Lungu, he took time to apologize. He accepted that cadres were harassing people. That was the major thing. Instead of learning from that, President HH has allowed cadres. They are all over. They attack people everywhere. Allow me also to go to Mr. Mubanga, who was saying, the history of Zambia says a party does not come back. We like it that way when they are overconfident. The easiest team to beat in a football match is the one that is overconfident. What he doesn't know, Mr. Mubanga, is the history of Zambia has shown that MMD was in power for 15 years. After that, PF took over and they were in power for 10 years. You see, reducing in order to reduce. From 15 years, MMD went. Then PF, we stayed for 10 years, we went. It therefore follows that by UPN, they are only staying for 5 years. They are a one-term government. And this is happening in the entire Africa. In Botswana, there, President Magwesi was a one-term government. Now there's President Boko. In Ghana, it was a one-term president. Former President Mahama came back. They told him it can never happen. Malawi might be a one-term government. They're going to elections in August. So UPND is definitely going there. Why would people vote for them? The common man caller here he said that we are not even the opposition. It's the people out there that are opposition. And in the compounds and locations of Lusaka and the Copper Belt and elsewhere, even in Southern Province, I'm there half the time campaigning quietly. They even say, now we know that PF was even better. And our own person from this region, we are now getting, we used to get so many bags of fertilizer, now it's giving us a kameda, and the hunger is even higher. Can assure you that August 2026, PF and the opposition alliance will get even more votes in Southern Province than we got in 2021, because the opposition that President HH has is himself and then the people. They'll be voting him out. Even 2021, President Edgar Lungu, people were at the time were devoting PF to Semuzi Mvela Maningi, like the same way Isetinambo Zimbela after 10 years. Now them 5 years, very cocky. The money people are suffering, saying us we are enjoying. So the people lined up early in August 2021 to vote us out. So they were just voting anywhere other than on PF. We were lucky, the few of us who survived in Lusaka, because we were all gone. People were resolved. The same way, next year, people are resolved. They'll vote anything other than Ipajanza. They'll vote anything other than where there is a symbol of UPND. That's the situation that they don't know. And there's only 1 year to go. There's nothing they can do. What can they do to reduce the price of milling? My colleague was talking about IMF. We warned them, don't go to the IMF, because it will get worse. We, the PF, it was on the table, but President Edgar Lungu loved the people of Zambia. He said, I cannot remove subsidies. They will die of hunger. We told them in Parliament, don't sign. They signed. Where is the price of milling meal? Where is the everything else has become difficult.
But it's good you bring that up, because can we survive as a country without subsidies?
Can we survive?
Yes, can we survive as a country? Well, can we survive without government subsidizing?
Listen, every government that is responsible will always find a way to subsidize. There is a component of running the economy and business side of government, but there's also a social side of government. Okay? You cannot get into government and start running it like Kantemba Panyumba. You are only focused on profit. No, this is about the welfare of people. Even in America, there are subsidies that are offered to balance the economy, but also to alleviate the challenges that the citizens may have. It may depend on which sector is a priority. In this case, it's a priority for people to eat. So subsidizing the agriculture sector is critical. The systems were meant that after a certain number of years, the ones who are subsidized graduate to become subsistence farmers, possibly commercial farmers. Then you go back and continue to grow, because the aim was that ultimately the agriculture sector should be able to produce enough food even for export. But for many years, I think up to the time that we're in government, one thing that we had been able to succeed to achieve through the subsidies is that we always guaranteed food security. The only thing is that our friends were not patriotic enough. How can you find I'm getting into at his farm, or maybe I'm criticizing that he's not running the farm properly, then he says, okay, come and try and run it for 1 year. I find there are stocks and stocks of reserves in terms of seed and everything. Then I decide to sell everything, and then tomorrow I start crying, I don't even have one seed to plant. That's basically what the UPND did, which we could have been able to utilize for 2-3 years, like we said earlier. They came and sowed. And the disaster is what also the American ambassador said a few weeks or a month or so ago, where he says this same government which sold maize to Tanzania, they ended up again going to try and import the same maize back, and they even paid, but the maize which they paid for, they have not even been delivered. It's these scandalous occurrences that have led us to where we are today.
Okay.
But subsidizing, responding to a question, is the responsibility of government. Those interventions must always be available from a government towards the citizens to mitigate situations. Why do we have, for example, when we had the coronavirus, why did the government have to go out of its way to mitigate in certain areas? It may be called subsidy, because subsidizing, because citizens' life must be prioritized over and above whatever consideration you can talk about.
Okay.
So subsidizing is part of the levers that the government will use to mitigate such a situation.
Just to add on quickly.
Just very quickly, because I'm out of time.
Okay, just quickly. My brother is talking about subsidy.
Yeah.
You see, this UPND government is a capitalist government, okay? But capitalism, then they follow it with Umunguru. They follow the USA, which is a capitalist country. But the same USA, they give subsidies to their people. They subsidize the farmers. FISIP type of subsidies there in the USA. They subsidize farmers. They subsidize their people. Here they take out all the subsidies. They take out subsidies from FISIP, from mill, from electricity, from everywhere. So they themselves, you see, before I forget a major point, the US ambassador even said the Gini coefficient in Zambia has even grown. We are about one of the top 10 West countries in the world. The gap between the rich and the poor under the UPND 2021 has now widened. So where Viveka, we can even count them, they are about just 5. They've become very rich, stinking rich. Manja is a majority, 20 million Zambians will become very poor. Why? Because they are capitalists. It's only about them. Their religion is only them should make money. All the local businesses, some of them, their friends, have collapsed because they don't even give them business. You see, when you give contracts, what's important, I found my brother here, the SG, talking about any government has to spend. And that's a big difference with the government of ECO and of HH. The government of ECO would use money for government and give contracts to Zambians to do roads, to do contracts to build hospitals. What that means is when that Zambian is paid, where will they spend the money? On their family, on their friends, they will send to their village in Kaputa or wherever it is. But this government, just this in Ndola, Lusaka dual carriage, huge amount of money. Not only, instead of giving a Zambian, I wouldn't have complained, they could have given anybody. But they go and give it to a foreigner, a Chinese man, who didn't even have money, comes in Zambia and gets money from NAPSA to do our own job. So why didn't they give that contract to a Zambian? So now that Chinese, when he gets paid, he sends the money to abroad. And the money is not in Zambia. Had they given you Luchi the contract to do Ndola Lusaka, I wouldn't have complained. Because Ukafola, it's just that you get that money. It's just that you are married now. I was going to say you'd send to your girlfriends, but now I know you're a one-man, one-woman man. But then you give our sister, your wife, she will also send it to our relatives in the village. The entire Zambia will enjoy the money that you're doing. So this government is just making life very, very difficult. Come next year, I'm more than confident, based on what I've seen. I've been traveling around the 10 provinces last 3 years. They have already gone, these people. It's just a penalty that will be taken
Sampa.
Next year.
Thank you very much for coming in. I know you had a busy day, but thank you very much for finding an hour at least to join us. Mr. Nakacinda as well, thank you very much for joining us on the program. That is today's edition of Let the People Talk. Thank you very much indeed for listening.
This has been Let the People Talk. Let the People Talk. Join us again every Tuesday